What's up, Nets fans? Welcome to the Brooklyn Buzz, presented by OTGBasketball.com. Your host, Nick Fay, with me, as always, the great Australian Jack Manuel. What's poppin', Jack?
Man, there's just always Nets news, Nick. It's good for us, good for Nets fans, good for the Brooklyn Buzz.
Honestly, like we were talking about prior to the show, it's just every week there's something small, big, or whatever. It's just like the Nets do not stop, either press conferences, news, interviews, whatever, injuries, sadly. But Jack, the schedule dropped today. We're going to talk about that first. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, check us out on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, and YouTube. Feel free to let us know what you think. Retweet, subscribe, hit us up. We want to hear from you. But Jack, let's start with the big news. The schedule dropped today at 4 p.m. We'll start with opening night, and then we'll kind of move into some matchups that we like. And opening night is at Detroit, October 17th, 7 p.m. Thoughts on the opening night matchup?
Yeah, I mean, this was one of the games last year that the Nets sort of stole from the clutches of defeat. So I think, with Blake Griffin, Andre Drummond, an improved D'Angelo Russell, all of our new acquisitions, I think that this could be a nice little fun matchup. We've talked about the Nets sort of pushing for the playoffs. Detroit seemed to be the near sort of consensus pick for around that sort of 8 seed. So if we're wanting to sort of push for the playoffs, this is probably going to be a team that we're going to have to beat along the way. And, hopefully, similar to sort of the Nets last year, Detroit generally doesn't have a big crowd, but hopefully opening night, not just Detroit fans, but, away Nets fans make the trip. And, I'll certainly be watching on League Pass for sure because, I'm excited as hell. 2 months and a little bit of change until we get to watch Brooklyn Nets basketball again.
Yeah, it's exciting just having a date to look forward to. And like you said, Pistons are a team, the Nets are serious about competing for the 8 seed, which it seems that they are. The Pistons are a team that they're going to have to beat, as well. It's a winnable game. It's a winnable game to start the season. It's always nice to start off 1-0. That just brings some confidence, especially for a young team.
Yeah, I mean, it's the fact that we need to sort of get off to a good start. Last season, that first game against the Indiana Pacers was one thing where we sort of made a bit of a statement. It was a bit of a shootout. Unfortunately, we had the Jeremy Lin injury, which certainly left a sour taste in all of our mouths. But I think, to start the season off well, to sort of get those playoff aspirations off to a good start is going to be a real key for the Nets in the 2018-19 season.
And the Nets will be seeing Detroit not much later, a few weeks after, maybe I think not even 2 weeks after they'll be playing Detroit at home. So they'll get to know them. And I saw this brought up on Twitter, and it's a good test for the Nets in terms of rebounding. They went to add rebounders this year with Ed Davis, Kenneth Reed. They want Jared Allen to take that next step. Going against Andre Drummond and Blake Griffin on opening night will give you an opportunity to kind of showcase those new rebounding skills.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that sort of system is. I think Andre Drummond is one of the best, if not the best, rebounder in the game today, especially in terms of stats-wise as well. But I think Ed Davis is the perfect sort of piece to sort of, counter that. Kenneth Reed gives us a real nice offensive presence there. And, Jared Allen is only on the way up in terms of that skill as well. So, it's one area we really struggled with last season, not necessarily stats-wise, but just playing against those sort of big teams. But I think now we've got, the ready-made replacements, the ready-made sort of lineup to sort of tackle those teams, the Andre Drummond, the Blake Griffin. Last season, if we had had the roster going into the same roster as the 2017-18 season coming against the Detroit Pistons, Andre Drummond would be putting up, 25 and 5, as would Blake Griffin. But I think this time around, we've got all the sort of guys to tackle them and, go for the win.
And I think it's a good test for Jared Allen and his growth. Like, how can he handle Andre Drummond? That was a player, the type of player he struggled with last season. So if he can have a nice game against him, it'll be a good sign for the rest of the season.
Definitely. And I think, he's got, a versatile enough skill set that he can impact in different ways. He has the length to, be a rim protector. He can use that speed. He's the Bleacher Report piece showed that, he's one of the hardest workers going around right now. I think it's going to be a big a nice sort of opening night for Jared Allen to look forward to. Sort of, you always have those sort of dates in mind, those goals in mind. Those little milestones in mind. And I think that this is one that, if Jared Allen, he seems to be that sort of old school guy we sort of love. I'm sure he got his own little pocketbook or diary that he's probably taking notes in. Doesn't seem like the dude that's probably got like the iPad and the tablets and stuff, but I'm sure he's probably putting down October 17, Andre Drummond in his notebook to look forward to.
Yeah, and it kind of sets a tone. Like, if he were to have a big game against, they're not the best bigs in the league, but they're two of the better bigs in the league, both top 10 at their position, arguably. If he could have a nice game against those two, it'd set the right tone. Moving on to opening night in Barclays, which I'll be there if you want to meet me. I always make sure I attend the Nets home opener, and that'll be against the New York Knicks, which in some ways is cool, but KP's not playing, so it'll be against a lesser team. But it also sucks in the sense that the people going to the game, the tickets are going to be a lot higher because it's against the Knicks. But what are your thoughts on home opener against New York?
I mean, it's let's kickstart this rivalry, Nick. The hashtag Apple fight, it begins now. Friday, October 19. Yeah, obviously there's the free agency rumblings that are going to be ever present throughout the season, and I'm sure there might be a storyline going into October 19. Who knows what Kyrie and Jimmy Butler's intentions are by that stage? 2 months is a very long time, but yeah, I absolutely wish I could be there for that opening night. But against the Knicks, hopefully we get a strong Brooklyn contingency. This sort of spreads the word to all of our Buzz fans. Get out there buzzing for us, because we need the black and white to overrun the blue and orange, because it's Barclays Center. We need to make that our fortress. I talked about on a preview pod for the outlet that the Atlanta Hawks were the least attended team in terms of attendees for the 2017-18 season. The Nets were 29th. So for us, I think, starting the season off against the Knicks, hopefully getting a win. We did, those were, whenever we would do Buzz episodes last year, I would always be disappointed, because I'm like, I never feel confident against the Knicks, because they always just have this sort of superiority complex over us, and it'd be nice to sort of rub it in their faces and get a win and just go, because there was some Twitter feud that was starting. Like, dude, it seems like everyone every day always starts with the Nets fans. And it's just like, by the end of the season, I'm sure that Nets fans, and hopefully by October 19, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be able to rub it in their faces as well and get that first apple off our back.
Yeah, and it's like the battle of Kyrie and Jimmy Butler, all season long. Both teams will be competing for them for agency-wise, and like you says, Apple fight. And I think the Nets need to take advantage of this. The Knicks going to this game are not going to be as talented. They're going to be missing their best player. They have a lot of young pieces they're going to play. I think this is a home opener you kind of capitalize and, like you said, kind of build up that rivalry and kind of, get the fans excited. And like you also mentioned, Nets fans need to show up, because it's pretty terrible when you go to the game. There's more Knicks fans than Nets fans. It's supposed to be your home arena. Obviously, it's in the same city, and Knicks fans, jump on the chance to get a lesser price ticket. But still, I think a home opener would be nice to see a lot of Nets fan overtake that, especially with the hype going into the season.
Barclays is one of the best arenas I've been to. I've been to a couple, been to Washington, been to Toronto, been to MSG. Barclays Center is one of the premier, sporting entertainment arenas in the world. And, Nets fans need to appreciate that and get out there. We do. I'm sure all of our listeners do. We just need to spread that word, get those casual fans going. D'Lo's in for a big season. There's plenty to be excited about. And, what better way to start it off than versing our crosstown rivals?
Any other games on the schedule that really stick out to you, Jack, that you're going to circle and be like, oh, I can't wait to watch this one?
Well, Nicholas, we chatted a little bit earlier that the fact that I may be heading over to the States around December, January. So I'm looking at that range and just looking for the games that I could possibly attend. So for me personally, teams like the Thunder, the Raptors, the Wizards, the Hawks, my Lakers, I've always wanted to see the live LeBron James, and against my own team would be insane. I'll have to start saving for that one, but I'll definitely be looking for around those teams. But for me, the surprising thing, were you surprised at how little nationally televised games that the Nets got?
I mean, do I feel like they're disrespected? Yes. Am I surprised? No, because I just feel like they're still like this cloud over the Nets, like they're this terrible franchise. There's not much hype, but I think, real NBA fans know that the Nets are actually an exciting team. They play at a good pace. They shoot a lot of threes. They play hard. They compete. There's not many blowouts. They're in a lot of games. So I think it would have there's other teams that got more nationally televised games that probably don't deserve it. But for right now, I'm not really surprised. Am I disappointed? Yes, but not surprised.
Yeah, the fact that the Knicks keep getting Christmas games, I get that if Kristaps was healthy as well.
Yeah.
But, maybe it's, I understand it because, MSG on Christmas Day, I'd love to just, go to MSG on it and have that, a possibility, have that in my backyard would be pretty awesome. And the fact that they're vesting the Bucks allows Giannis to sort of make a bit of a statement at MSG. But I'm looking forward to the day because, the Lakers have 43 nationally televised games. The Nets have about. So, it pales in comparison, but we can't compare it to LeBron James. And next season is going to be the really intriguing aspect. If the Nets are a fringe playoff team, they have that cachet of being a New York team. They have that sort of, if we get a Kyrie Irving or a Jimmy Butler, I think our numbers will skyrocket in that sense. But yeah, for me, it's around that December and January range. And if you go to head to, slide into the DMs at the JMN JBT at OTG Basketball.
For sure. I mean, and definitely any game that Jack goes when he comes over from Australia to the States, I'll be there with him to go to the game for sure. It'll definitely be a fun event. And like you kind of get back to the other point, 5 games on NBA TV, 1 on ESPN. It's like, all right, whatever. But kind of looking at the early stretch of the season, the first 10 or so games, what do you think of it? Do you think the Nets are going to be able to come out and win a couple games, or it's going to be a really tough start to the season?
Well, let's go through the games a little bit, Nick. We've got the Detroit Pistons, the Knicks, the Pacers away, the Cavs away, the Pelicans away. That's a tough stretch. That's a tough stretch away. Then we get back home, and it doesn't get any easier against the Warriors. We head back to MSG against the Knicks, then the Pistons. Around that sort of range, it's going to be a tough opening sort of stretch, and it doesn't get any easier after that because we've got the Rockets, and it's a very, very tough stretch to start the season. I know last year we had moments where we were going like sort of 7-3 runs. I think if we can get like 3 or 4 wins out of those first 10, I think that would leave us in good stead. If we can get a surprise win here or there, if it happens to be that the Warriors aren't on their game, they might certainly not the team that they used to be, but it's going to be a tough stretch to start the season. But, you want to prove yourself in that sort of opening range and sort of get yourself into good footing heading into the latter part of the season because, the 82-game season is an absolute grind. And our Nets have always finished well because that's generally when teams are sort of resting players. But for us, if we're looking for playoff aspirations, we're going to have to get a few upset wins. And they may be against these really highly ranked teams like the Sixers, like the Rockets, like the Warriors. I reckon if we can sneak 1 or 2 there, beat the Knicks, who we should, beat the Pistons, who we should, but at the same time, they would be heavily favored as well.
We should win at least one of the Piston games.
We have to. I think we have to, whether it's at home or away. I think that if we can't, then it's it's going to leave us behind the 8 ball. But yeah, it's going to be a tough stretch to start the season, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, I think the only positive, I guess you could say, is some of the good teams struggle out of the gate. They don't take it as serious, like a team like Houston or Golden State, where they're like already thinking about the finals or the Western Conference Finals. You might be able to capitalize on them. The Sixers, I think, will be playing hard, but the Knicks, like you said, a game that they got to win. The Pacers, they'll compete with the Pacers. They always compete with the Pacers, usually a close game. Maybe they can pull one out this year. Cleveland, I think that's a game they have to win because I'm not very high in Cleveland. I know some people think they'll compete for the playoffs. I just look at them as like a defensive disaster, like no rim protection at all. Like they should be able to really exploit the Cavs in that game. New Orleans is going to be tough because Anthony Davis is just a beast. Golden State, I don't even got to mention anything on them. I think it'd be big if they could beat the Knicks both times when they face them. And then Detroit, like I said, one for one is okay. What about the final stretch of the season, though? If they're trying to make that playoff push, looking just peeking at like the last 5 games, that's a tough stretch if you're in a playoff race.
Yeah, absolutely. You got the Miami Heat as our last game, the Pacers, the Bucks, the Raptors, and the Bucks again.
Those before that, Boston, Philly, Portland, LA. Like what?
It's just like, I mean, if we're around that range, we're certainly going to have to earn our spot. But at the same time, the end of the season, like I sort of mentioned just a little bit earlier, is when those teams sort of start to rest players a little bit. The Boston Celtics could have solidified that top spot, and Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, they might be managing them. Give Toyo Rozier some more time. Give Marcus Smart some more time. The Bucks and the Raptors, maybe Kawhi Leonard. They want to rest him going into a playoff push. But the Heat will probably be around that range. And last season we had some really great tussles with them. Same with the Pacers. There's no easy games in today's NBA, Nick, unless you're versing, the Hawks on back-to-backs or maybe even the Kings. But, I think that you're going to have to earn your keep every year, earn your keep every game. And I think that's a good thing for our Nets. And I think we need to establish that winning culture at the start and at the end. And I think it's going to be about consistency and health as we sort of preach quite frequently.
Yeah, and in no way do I expect the Nets to win a playoff series. Do I think it's the smallest type of possibility? Yeah, maybe. But if they were to get into the playoffs, they'd have some nice momentum having to face all those teams going into the playoffs and kind of building up their confidence. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Anything else on the schedule that really sticks out to you, Jack, or we'll just kind of go through it as it happens?
Yeah, not a whole heap. I'm sure we'll probably dive into it a little bit deeper. The preseason is only a month and a half away, and we could see some signs there. The Nets showed a little bit in preseason. Obviously you're not showing your cards too much, but yeah, I'm super excited. I'm just a little bit giddy at the fact that, like, when am I going to head over to the States? How many games can I see? How much is it going to cost me? All these sort of things. I always love heading to New York, one of my favorite cities in the world, and the fact that who knows, by that stage the buzz could be blowing up thanks to you guys and all you listeners, and I could get a media pass and sneak in for free. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, that's a real possibility. So big shout out to everybody who listens. And like we said, definitely show some love on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, and YouTube. But we do have some bad news to touch on. It's not super bad news. It looked like it could be a lot worse. Rondé Hollis Jefferson was injured in a charity event in China playing in the Jeremy Lin, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Joe Tice. He strained his left adductor, which is pretty much a groin strain. Recovery is anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks, so he'll be probably ready just before training camp. What were your thoughts on this injury, and how do you think it'll impact RHJ?
Yeah, disappointing. Disappointing to say the least.
It's like
For
the
those
biggest
that
fear of those games, those charity games.
Yeah, of any sort of like friendly game. We saw, in a sort of like mini sort of dunk contest, him pull up quite limp. For those that haven't seen the video, I think it's been swirling around. It's on Nets Daily as well. Yeah, it's not the nicest video to see, but I did a little bit of research to see some like recent adductor injuries to different players. Devin Booker suffered one last year around December, and he was only out for 3 weeks, and he came back, was absolutely fit and firing, earned himself that max contract at the end of the year. So it's certainly not the worst news, that for sure. It's going to be interesting to see, how quickly he recovers. Are there any sort of lingering injuries? Because RHJ has had his, the course of his career, but I think the fact that it's just a strain, there's no tears. I think it's just going to be about management. And by September 26th, when training camp should out, so he could still attack the training camp in the summer with a nice sort of full gusto, so he can have a nice start to the season.
Yeah, pretty much everything you said, Jack. I mean, it sucks when you get injured in these type of events when you're trying to do good for the people in the community. But the only thing that worries me is, like, I've had a groin injury actually playing basketball way back in the day, and it is something that can linger a bit. And it's something that you can easily re-injure if you come back a little bit too soon. Knowing the Nets performance team, they'll probably ease him back, but obviously it's a little bit scary. And the only, I guess, a more positive thing is RHJ's been with the Nets the longest at anybody on the team, so he has a better idea of what to expect in terms of Kenny's system and whatnot. But still, you'd like to see him at training camp for a guy who still has a lot of skill development left.
Yeah, I think definitely keep an eye on his Instagram and his Twitter, and obviously the Nets. The thing that's the one thing that's good about the Nets and one thing that's bad about the Nets, nothing ever really leaks. So it's like, Rondé Hollis Jefferson has been seen at the training facility with Sean Marks and the medical team. That never leaks for us. So we can't like find any little tidbits on Twitter, which is a good thing because it shows that there's solidarity within the franchise. But for us sort of reporters and, fans and stuff, we want to hear those little things coming out, see those sort of pics on Twitter, so on Instagram and such. But hopefully, it's nothing serious. They can linger somewhat, but I think it's only a strain. So, obviously it can affect his hip and other sort of areas as well. But I think, like you mentioned, Nick, RHJ knows his body. He's long enough. He knows what to expect from all of the such. So it's on the scale of 1 to 10, it wouldn't be any higher than a 5 for me. If that, it'd probably be like a 3.
Yeah, I think a 3 or 4 is definitely around what it's at. It looked a lot more scary when you saw it. Anytime you see someone grab like that, it looked like it might have been a hamstring, which is probably even worse, especially playing basketball, being explosive, popping off that hamstring a lot. But luckily it wasn't, and there's just enough time for him to get back. But moving
plenty
on
of time. Plenty
go
of
ahead,
time.
Jack.
Yeah, I was just going to say, plenty of time. The fact that this is happening now, if there's the season, you don't want to get those injuries, during training camp or during the preseason, in terms of attacking the regular season with full timing is everything.
Yeah, exactly. Timing's everything in basketball and pretty much all sports. Kenny Atkinson was on the radio, the Michael K show, and Nets Daily transcribed it in one of their articles. So we're going to kind of break down some of the quotes from that. First up, and this is Kenny on free agency of next year. I think you have to dream big. You have to dream big. It's a little bit on us. How do we do this year? The word around the league, players, they talk to each other. What's it like in Brooklyn? How do they treat you? How do they treat their families? What are the fans like? What's the Barclays Center like? I think all those things in our favor. Players talk, and I think they'll have seriously consider us.
Yeah, I think the big thing, Nick, is the families part. I think you've mentioned that plenty of times, and it doesn't get enough sort of credence. You know, players are so much more than just being basketballers, and they want what's best for their family, whether it's good schools, whether it's support for them. And I think the Nets have sort of built that ever since Sean Marks came in. And I think it's there's signs around our training facility about the fact that like family is such an important thing. As well, I think the fact that the dream big thing has been mentioned by him and Sean Marks. There's almost like an inkling that they might know something more than we do, or whether they're just speaking into existence LeVar Ball style. It's certainly nice to sort of hear those comments coming from not only the guy at the head of it all with Sean Marks, but Coach Kenny.
Yeah, it definitely feels like there's some internal confidence that we don't know about. And like you said, there's different factors for that. But another quote from Kenny, and this kind of tags onto that. I just think that through word of mouth, players talking to each other and agents are a big part of this as well. And Kenny concluded, noting the Nets' big success stories, Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie are part of the pitch as well. So having the guys, and like you said, the agents talking, the players talking, how they treat you in Brooklyn, at the facility, at the training center or whatever, and then people realizing that Kenny's getting the best out of the Kenny and the coaching staff's getting the best out of players.
Yeah, and I think that Coach Kenny sacrifices. We've heard him on podcasts, we've heard him in talk to media and such. The level of commitment that he has to get the most out of his players is near unparalleled. A lot of these sort of established coaches, that have the stars within them and have that sort of, can rely on that talent that it's almost that it's automatic for those sort of guys. They don't necessarily need a coach to sort of coach them the skills. They more need them to coach them and guide them in a way. Whereas Coach Kenny sort of needs to develop these guys in a really important way. And it'll be interesting to see, if in the future he does have a star on his roster, how that sort of changes, because, he's been very sort of democratic with how he sort of has, shared his minutes over his time as being the Nets coach. And that's probably going to be very similar going to next season. Apart from Dealer, there's not really one sort of standout guy that you want to sort of ride on. So, if we were to get that sort of, the agents were to go, look, this is one of the teams that we've worked with. We've heard nothing but good things. The players said nothing but good things. Karis LeVert has a decent enough relationship with Kevin Durant. He's been called Baby Durant before. He's my guy that I want more than anyone, but we'll talk about it. That'll be a consistent topic going forward. But yeah, I think the agents thing is one thing that's another little thing that we haven't heard before. So Sean Marks has alluded to it, but to mention it explicitly from Coach Kenny is something that hasn't been revealed in the past.
Yeah, and I think it's something the Nets have really worked on. Like we've talked about it on different shows, is offering all these big offer sheets, getting players paid, taking up G Leaguers or taking some of these guys and offering them big deals or just having interest and kind of reaching out. I think it'll only help the Nets. And then, moving forward, they're going to help get guys paid in terms of like guys are coming away from the Nets when they add other talent. Spencer Dinwiddie were to leave the Nets next year, he's going to sign a nice contract somewhere else if he were to leave. So I think it'll give a lot of great relationships with agents and the Nets, which is obviously big in free agency.
Absolutely.
Now, talking D'Angelo, when Michael K asked about him, Atkinson had this to say: he's a talented guy. He's got great court vision, incredible hand-eye coordination, really understands the game. He wants to be great. He's been in our gym all summer. In the NBA, it's not an obligation. You have to want to be there. So he's been there. He's really been working on his body. He's got to make some strides there. He's got to get stronger. He needs to work on his explosiveness a little bit, but he's proven to me being there every day in the offseason. Great stuff to hear, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's going to be on D'Lo now. All these comments, all this praise coming from him, from Jared Dudley, from Sean Marks. Now it's on D'Lo to prove it, to repay the faith that has been to repay the praise as well that has been, showered upon him by his coach, by his teammates. It's going to be up for D'Lo now to sort of go, okay, you guys believe in me. I'm going to repay that belief. And hopefully, more than anything, D'Lo does do that. He's done all the right things. He's put the foundations in place, but, doing it in the gym in, July, August, in Greece, in Mykonos, he had a bit of fun out there, and he still hit up the gym with his boy Devin Booker as well. But he's also got to do it, in the preseason. I want to see some signs there. I want to hear good things in training camp. I want to hear him being a vocal leader as well. That explosiveness thing, I like the fact that Coach Kenny sort of did that sort of compliment sandwich, showered upon him and go, look, you still need to work on this, because I think for him to become an elite guard, explosiveness is absolutely key. You need to be able to get past your defender, get into the lane, draw fouls, And even if that explosiveness is just like a really quick step and get a pull-up jumper as well, I think that's going to work wonders for D'Lo. But yeah, really nice comments from Coach Kenny.
Yeah, and I think with his ability to dribble the ball kind of puts you to sleep a little bit, and then having an explosive step could really change that. And I think getting off the ground a little bit quicker will help his game a lot. But like you said, it's just everything you want to hear. And not only do I want to see him step up as a leader, I think defensively, even if it's not great defense, just putting in the energy and competing really on that end and just having some big plays that kind of gets the team, ignited.
Yeah, and I think it's about having that energy, man. And I think that D'Lo knows how big of a season this is for him. He's motivated by his buddy Devin, given that sort of max contract extension. D'Lo could have been at that point. Who knows what could have happened if he was still at the Lakers? But he's with the Nets now. He's going to need to prove it to himself and to the people around him, and to plenty of naysayers.
Definitely, and I think it's a real possibility. So, and then Michael K went to ask him a little bit about wins this season, and he said our players see the quantum leap as a possibility, but I do think we have to come to it from a humble way too. We only won 28 games last year, 8-game improvement, which is good. It's hard in the NBA, but listen, I'd take another 8 to 10 game improvement. That'd be fantastic.
Game improvement is near playoff contention. Obviously, plenty of teams, even some of our guys have talked about the fact that, like, look at the Pacers, look at the Bucks back in the day. All these teams, make that sort of jump and surprise everyone. There's not going to be any easy nights. And, obviously last season as well, we sort of struggled closing out games, whether that was due to our own fault or whether it was due to the fault of the refereeing. 8 to 10 wins, slowly but steadily, it can happen. But, if we take an even bigger lead, that's going to leave us in playoff contention. So, I think it should be about as much as, if we have that 8 to 10 wins as well, that's going to be like, that'll put their names out to free agents and go, look, you join this, you take us an extra 10 wins automatically. And that's top 4 contention, in the playoffs as well. So, I think it's nice to have those goals, but at the same time, Coach Kenny is sort of tempering expectations a little bit because, there's still a long way to go. You can talk, but you got to prove it on the court as well.
Yeah, I think, like you said, no game's going to be easy. And I think a 10-win improvement puts you right on the fringe of the playoffs. You might not get into there, but it's still a selling point to free agents. Like you said, kind of building up every single season, getting better. It kind of proves a point, and then you add a big-time free agent, you add to that step, and then there's still more development on the team because I don't think many of the guys are going to max out this season. So overall, I thought it was a really nice interview from Kenny. They also mentioned that, him and Sean never talk about tanking, and it's not really an option for this team, which is something we kind of already knew based off of the comments of Sean Marks, but it's still always good to hear again.
Yeah, there's no point in establishing acceptance of losing. In terms of the fact that the Nets want to establish a culture, why would you even think about that? We're not the Atlanta Hawks, we're not the Sacramento Kings. There's no point in that. If you get a pick, yes, that'd be wonderful. But at the same time, we've got 2 first-round picks. It's about establishing winning habits and a winning culture, and that doesn't come with tanking at all.
Yeah, exactly. But moving on from Kenny's interview, we got some 2K ratings out. We'll kind of dabble into them a little bit as they drop. D'Angelo Russell an 83, Spencer Dinwiddie is 79. Thoughts on these two?
I think Spencer was slightly slept on. I would have preferred him at that 80 range. I know he made some comments as well himself on Instagram and Twitter, sort of saying, they got my goatee right, but they still don't have me in the 80s, which was nice. And I think they got D'Lo's tattoos finally. So they're finally giving some positivity, finally getting some credits to our boys. But yeah, some people are saying, D'Lo's too high. Most people are saying D'Lo's too high. Some people are saying he's a little bit too low. I think that's probably right for D'Angelo, around that range, about in that 83 range. I think that, he proved enough at the start and end of the season that he is a sort of early 80s player. He can certainly rise, but I think that's fair. And if anything, I probably would have expected him to be an 82, whereas, I thought Spencer proved enough consistently that he is, an 80 player. Maybe not any higher than that. But these players love seeing the numbers come out, and we do too. It gives us plenty of content. And what do you think? Do you think they should have been higher, lower, or just right?
I think Spencer's definitely too low. I think you finished top 3 in most improved voting, and you just have a big season in terms of like carrying the team. Obviously, your efficiency numbers weren't great, but I think I easily would have -2 from D'Angelo and added those 2 to Spencer. And I think being both at 81 would be fair because I think
Yep.
D'Angelo has plenty of potential, doesn't necessarily always put it all together, and there's an injury concern. But when he was on the court and actually starting and playing big minutes, I think 83 is a fine number. But I definitely think at least 80 for Dinwiddie. Like, that's kind of disrespectful getting like the same ranking as like some of the rookies coming in, or like right or along those lines. Like, I think he's proven that he's been a consistent enough player.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Luka Doncic got an automatic 79, I think that was probably a little bit low. If even they've released like about 25 players, I believe. D'Lo, Jaylen Brown's an 84. I think Jaylen Brown proved a
That's
lot more
low
than
as hell.
that's low. And Kemba Walker, 86. That is far, far too low. The fact that he's lower than Tatum, Mitchell, and Simmons altogether is one thing that I'm not a big fan of.
I would
Kyle Kuzma,
swap Tatum and Brown.
yeah, yeah, I think you quite easily could do that. I think Jaylen Brown's shown enough. He's been more consistent in that sense, especially defensively.
Yeah,
Kyle
2A.
Kuzma, Kyle Kuzma's an 80. The fact that Kyle Kuzma, did he have a better season than Spencer Dinwiddie? I don't think so. The fact that he's better as well, he's exactly the same as Luka Doncic, DeAndre Ayton, and one better than Josh Richardson, who's at the 78, who I think was slept on as well. I think a lot of these ratings, I don't know what Ronnie 2K was doing in the offseason, but he certainly missed the mark a little bit, I believe. And
I feel
DeMar
like
DeRozan,
two-way players are slept on.
I think DeMar DeRozan was slipped on a little bit. He didn't even crack the 90s. He only got an 89. Paul George only got an 89. Damian Lillard got a 90. You could argue that DeMar DeRozan and Paul George are better players than Damian Lillard. But I think the ratings change pretty quickly. With some early season form, they'll fluctuate. They'll go up, they'll go down. But it'll be interesting to see, what guys like Karis LeVert coming out will be. Shabazz Napier, Ed Davis, and such. But yeah, it was nice to see. The fact that 2 of our Nets guys have already been released. And Spencer Dinwiddie, the funniest, he did 2 Instagram posts. He has a photo of him scratching his head. Scratching his head when they say the Rooks are already better than you at NBA 2K. # audience of one. I like seeing this stuff from our guys. Like seeing that sort of confidence about them. I think he's probably going to have that little bit of extra motivation. It can't hurt to sort of hear that, because giving these guys any sort of weapon to sort of go, okay, I can prove you wrong. I can, beat you guys. I'm way better than this guy who's like an 81 or whatever. I think it only is going to fuel the fire for a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie.
Agreed. I mean, some of them I'm sure don't really care at all, but I'm sure some guys actually that play 2K a lot are kind of pissed about it, or if they know like Ronnie 2K and they're like, bro, how are you going to disrespect my game? And I just feel like they don't. I mean, I don't know like scientifically how they add up all the numbers, but for me, it just doesn't really make sense sometimes. Like, are they doing it based off of what? Like, is all of these stats being combined and averaged out, or what? Because like Spencer does plenty of decent things to be an 80. Like,
I remember hearing them say, whether it was Ronnie 2K or someone in the behind the scenes saying that they have an algorithm, have a system of sorts. So. And also, I think that in that sense, Spencer Dinwiddie, the final one, he did 3 2K posts, 2 on Instagram, 1 on Twitter. The one on Twitter, I'm a 79, but they say my clutch rating is top 5. Lol, at NBA 2K, at Ronnie 2K. It's fun to see, but at the same time, we may talk about what we predict for some players going forward, because that game's going to be fire. I'm going to be copping it first day out, but I might even be in London at that stage. So I might have to hopefully get it over there, bring my PS4 over.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be having some 2K content at OTG basketball. And like Jack said, we're going to kind of touch on these every week as they kind of drop and give maybe some predictions on next time. But Jack, we meant to do this a week or 2 ago, but like we kind of talked about earlier, there's just like Nets news every week, and there's just like a ton of content. D'Angelo dropped his gym video, and he picked the J. Cole song. Blow Up, exactly. He picked up Blow Up, and obviously it kind of talked about his haters a little bit. I thought that was a really good song. So you had the idea for us to come up with our own gym songs that we were to make a promo video basketball-wise. So you start us off, Jack. What do you got?
Man, one thing, D'Lo chose my favorite J. Cole song, funnily enough. I'm not the biggest J. Cole fan. I'm not like as much of a stan of his as some others, but one of my favorite songs from one of his early mixtapes, a very slept-on song, and very nice lyrical content that was very much related. I think you have to sort of go the hip-hop route here. I'm probably going to go with it's really hard to pick. If I'm doing like as an OTG sort of basketball thing, I'd go with like Kanye's Good Mercy Click, because I think that sort of is about, if we were doing like a group video, that'd be like the ultimate one. Me, you, Corey, Jay, getting the whole team, getting Dylan, getting Dom, getting everyone involved in it. I think that'd be a cool one. But I went with ASAP Rocky's first album from Long Live ASAP, Goldie. I think it's one of his best songs. For those that haven't heard it or sleep on it, check it out. It's one of ASAP's best songs. ASAP's one of the better rappers, one of the more unique rappers. I love his style, love his flow. And, he's very pretty as well. Something I love about him as well. He's a good looking, very fashionable dude. He's dated Kendall. He's dated Chanel Amana, a former model for Victoria's Secret, and he's appeared in the movie Dope, which was an awesome movie. But it was hard to yeah, he was awesome in that. Like solid acting chops. It was so hard to not pick some like Jay-Z songs or even some rock songs as well. It was a very, very hard process. We may have to revisit this on a.
Nah, Jack, you got to make a promo video now with basketball.
Yeah.
But no, like you said though, this is honestly even having 2 weeks to figure this out, it's still probably one of the more difficult things. And I don't even think I'm completely in love with my song because I don't think about other songs. But I don't know why. I just think the title, even of the song, Drake and Future Jumpman, I just think that it just fits the criteria of a great promo video, and it just has the hype to it and the way the lyrics kind of lead into it. I think it would just do wonders. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if somebody's already used it too.
Man, well, they used it basically every. I remember they would just and they would just play Jump Out. That whole album, you could pick Big Rings as well, which is a sick song. But that whole album, Diamonds Dance, fire. Yeah. Hopefully soon enough we'll get our big rings. Hopefully soon enough.
God bless. Prayers to Sean Marks and Kenny. Make it happen.
Absolutely.
Talking about big things and big ring possibilities, Jay Williams, former Duke player, big college analyst, does some NBA analyst as well. You sent this to me. He came out and said in an interview that he believes Kyrie and Jimmy Butler both want to come to Brooklyn next season.
Yikes. This doesn't come without some sort of, knowledge because a former Duke guy as well. The fact that, Kyrie has that very, very strong Duke connection, JJ Redick as well. Plenty of Duke guys in the NBA today. So for Jay Williams to come out and say it, so brashly, you can't ignore it. And the fact that, that's already coming out and with such sort of gusto, I think it's a good thing. But at the same time, you don't want to sort of put it out into the universe and then it's just it's not true at all. But who knows? We don't know of a relationship that the Duke alumni might have. They might have their own WhatsApp going on. They might have their own Slack going on. We don't know about that. They might have their own Twitter DMs. But the fact that it was put out there by, a relatively, credible source means that, it's only going to grow. The Apple fight continues to increase. Who's going to get the first one off? I think, the Nets are sort of, they released the sort of, the betting odds. The Knicks are above the Nets, but I think that, you could certainly change that by mid-season, and if these comments keep coming out from guys like Jay Williams.
Yeah, it's definitely really interesting. And the more you hear it, the more credible you think it is, because it's not the first time we heard these rumblings. Like we mentioned, David Aldridge, Mark Stein on the last show talked about some of the rumors, and there being credible rumblings that the Nets are interested in these guys. And kind of like what we hinted at earlier, Kenny and Sean seem pretty confident about next free agency, and they do have a great relationship with agents. So maybe there's already some talk developing. We don't want to get the Nets in trouble for tampering, but it looks like there might be some notions already out there that it's a real possibility.
When there's smoke, there's fire. I've mentioned that plenty of times in my articles and on the Buzz. Where there's smoke, there's fire. So we'll certainly have to watch.
Do you think if the Nets made a move for Jimmy Butler this year, that it makes it a lot more likely that these two end up in Brooklyn next year?
I think it almost makes it, near certain that the fact that would happen, because Jimmy and Kyrie are known to be, the closest of friends, or maybe even KD. KD's a little bit older, but I think Jimmy and Kyrie have a really strong relationship. So I think that if one of them goes, the rumor mill is going to heat up almost to a third base to the fact that, the other is coming. Whereas, if we were to sort of get like a KD, it might be a little less likely, or Kawhi Leonard, despite the fact that, Kawhi is sort of said to be, on the call out, using his purple font to all of the different people about can you come on board? But yeah, I think, I wonder who do you think would be more likely to be the first domino to drop, Kyrie or Jimmy, Nick?
That's really tough. I mean, if they made a trade for Jimmy, then obviously that's the first domino to
Yeah.
drop, and you kind of get him. And I don't think you're going to be able to make a trade with Boston. Most likely, I don't think you'll be able to make a trade with Boston. I don't really see them moving him. I just don't think it's, especially because they're probably going to a deep playoff run and they have the confidence to be like, if we make the Eastern Conference Finals or the finals, it's going to be hard for Kyrie to leave. Where so Minnesota, who knows? Their season could go terribly, and they might just be like, all right, Jimmy Butler's leaving the offseason. Let's make a move and get him out of here. And then I think soon as you add the one star, because I would believe, I'm not, like I said, a CBA expert, but since it was acquired in trade, I would think the bird rights would come to the Nets so they could go over the cap as well, and they would still have cap space to make the move. So there could be a lot of different possibilities, and it makes it more likely for Kyrie. I don't know as much about Jimmy Butler's other relationships, but I think as another star, knowing that you have Jimmy Butler, a guy who wants to get into it defensively, makes it a little bit more enticing because you might not have to defend the best perimeter player every single possession, or if it was Kawhi, you guys could kind of swap back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you sort of answered your own question there. I think because Jimmy Butler is the one more likely to be acquired via trade, then he seems to be the more likely one that could come. Whether it's at that
He's a
trade
more
deadline.
lock to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, he's more likely to leave. The rumblings around Kyrie, keep going and aren't going away. Obviously, Kyrie keeps his cards close to his chest. Whatever sized cards, whether they're round word cards or whatever cards they like. Funnily enough, if he comes on our team, I'm going to become like a flat Earth believer, and it's going to be the worst thing. I'm just going to like just jump on whatever he says and buy all of his books, buy all of his. I mean, I already have two the Kyrie ones and the Kyrie threes, and his shoes are my favorite basketball signature shoes going around. So if he were to come to the Nets and get like a Nets colorway, man, I'd be salivating. So maybe I want Kyrie more than I want Jimmy and Kawhi. Who knows?
I think one thing that makes the Nets super enticing for Kyrie and something that it seems that he has interest in, being a big believer in Kobe and looking up to him as a player, is that if he came to Brooklyn, I've said this before, there's nobody, obviously New Jersey Nets is a little bit different, but in Brooklyn Nets history, there's no player where you're like, wow, this guy was so great. He's amazing. I think of Brooklyn. I think of the Nets. I mean, right now you think of the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, you might think of Joe Johnson or Brook Lopez, and no offense to those guys. It's not like they're all-time greats or like top fives at their position, or they led the Nets to any deep playoff runs. You get Kyrie Irving. He comes here. He's the star of the team, the leader of this team, takes the Nets to a final trip or Eastern Conference final trip or something. We saw what it did for Jason Kidd and his career and how it'll be, one of his bigger accolades. So I think Kyrie could look at that vision too and being like, all right, I can really be like what the Brooklyn Nets are. Same thing for Jimmy Butler, KD, or Kawhi. Like there's some real potential to have a franchise changing impact.
Yeah, definitely. KD for his sort of storyline, if he wants to sort of redeem himself to sort of, the NBA naysayers, Brooklyn or New York seems to be the likely destination for him to do that. But Nick, I've done my social media sleuthing. I'm back with that. I've got a couple up my sleeve, but I think it relates to what we were talking about a little bit. And this is via Clutch Nets. We'll focus on this one. If you could pick one player, not just free agent, to put on the Nets, who would it be? You can have anyone in the NBA, LeBron James down to Wayne Selden.
Anthony Davis.
I was thinking you were going to say that. But what's your reasoning behind that? We've already got Jared Allen.
I think, well, first off, I think they probably could play together, but I also think Anthony Davis is like the next up. I guess if you're worried about the Jared Allen fit, I would say Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah,
Because
I mean,
I'm looking younger and I'm thinking timeline like LeBron would be great, and I love LeBron. I've turned into a huge LeBron fan, but he's getting up there in age, and you have all these younger pieces, and like how much longer can he do it? I think either Giannis or AD. I mean, Kawhi would be up there as well if I'm sure about his health. KD's a little bit older than what I'm looking for because I'm looking at the timeline and what's going to fit. Obviously, I'm being super picky, but you asked me whatever player I could choose, so
yeah.
it'd probably be between Giannis, AD, and Kawhi.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say Kawhi for me personally. I'd probably have KD close there because I think that his game can age very well.
Because of that super ridiculous freaky body, yeah.
Absolutely, he's going to go down as one of the best scorers in the history of the game. In terms of just his overall skill set, and he's become a more capable defender with age as well. Also, I can't discount LeBron James because he's my favorite player of all time, and to have my favorite player on my favorite team, even just for a season or two, I can't knock back the fact with that. But if I'm ranking, I'd probably go Kawhi, KD, LeBron, and then AD and Giannis as well. I think AD there's a weird thing with AD though in terms of marketability. Giannis has more of a cachet there. The fact that Giannis has his own signature shoe, despite the fact that everyone's sort of on the AD bandwagon for him to sort of be the next face, or in terms of at least skill set. The marketability wise, whether it's the fact that he's in New Orleans or if is it his personality. If he would go to Brooklyn, like a big market, I'm sure that would change. But yeah, it's just interesting the thing about AD. But yeah, it's just me personally.
Yeah, I could see it. And I mean, I could see the worries about the Jared Allen fit where AD's best position is probably center, and Jared Allen obviously is a center too. I think there is some versatility, though, where one of them could kind of play off ball. And if I'm being honest, if I had the choice to have AD over Jared Allen, I love him, but I would take AD and I would move Jared Allen for something. That's just because AD just has, once in a lifetime type of skill set, and he has the potential to be an all-time great if he were to stay healthy. I would say honorable mention, though, some people might hate this, but James Harden, just because of what he could do in Kenny's system and just the fact that he's just an offensive monster. Obviously, there's some question about his postseason success, but he still has plenty of time to fix that.
I would also say honorable mention. I will, if I don't say this, then all the Australian listeners may leave. Honorable mention to Ben Simmons, that sort of young.
He would be a good fit, to be honest.
Has potential to be. Yeah, MVP contender Ben Simmons if he somehow figures out a jumper. He was born to play in the NBA, and Ben Simmons, the fact that he's already going to become the face of Australian basketball, the face of Nets basketball at the same time, man. It'd just be both of my dreams come true. So I mean, it's a fun thing to ponder.
I think a lot of it just depends too on who the Nets have, who's taking off. Is D'Angelo doing amazing at point guard? Is he looking like he's going to be one of the best in the league? What else you got in this Luton?
I mean, we've got some re-sign one, trade one, let one walk. This is via Russell, Spencer Dinwiddie, and RHJ. You got to re-sign one, you got to trade one, you got to let one walk.
Wow, this is
hard.
Tough.
It's really hard.
I'm going to re-sign D'Angelo Russell because I believe in him and I believe in what he can do, and he has the highest potential. So that one I think is the easiest aspect of the question. Now, the hardest one is who's going to get you more value, Spencer Dinwiddie or RHJ? I actually might think RHJ could get you more value because of the versatile skill set and what he's kind of a need for a lot of teams that play that switchability where he can guard kind of 1 through 4, maybe even 1 through 5. Where Spencer's a backup point guard, he's probably one of the best backup point guards in the league, but they seem a little bit easier to find than one of these switchable players. So I think I'm going to trade RHJ and then I'm going to let Spencer walk. Also, I believe RHJ is a little bit younger than Spencer too.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably flip it. I'd probably trade Spencer Dinwiddie because of the fact that I think his value is maybe a little bit higher. I think that RHJ's ceiling he may not have reached it yet, but unless he finds a jumper, then I don't think that he's going to be as valuable to a team. Whereas Spencer Dinwiddie, I sent out a tweet. I've been doing some sort of daily tweets about some net stats and nets facts at the J-Man JVT. Yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie shot better from 30 to 39 feet than from 25 to 29 feet. And that's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. That's Steph Curry-like. And, a lot of teams sort of want that guy to be able to just pull up and just come out of nowhere. So for me, I would just have, it's negligible. There are people talking about, I think Nate Duncan Daniel on their podcast were talking about sort of possible contracts for guys like RHJ going forward, being restricted free agents, and teams that were talking about $9 million $9 million per year range, which I think is kind of fair. But at the same time, if he hits we didn't expect him to make that offensive jump last year. But Coach Kenny and the training staff and RHJ himself worked wonders. If he can, surprise us again and hit a capable jumper, maybe above a level of DeMar DeRozan, then that takes his game to a completely different stratosphere.
I think the one thing that entices me more with RHJ is that's the unknown. Like if he were to add the 3-ball, that's a game changer. If he were to kind of clean up the dribbling, where I think there's more fixable things, where Spencer, you just kind of need him to be a better shooter, which is possible too. But I just like the RHJ. It's kind of like a mystery. And I think he's just a little bit more interesting, where you might be willing to kind of trade for him. Spencer's more of a guy you already know what you're going to get. And I think more teams would probably be interested in Spencer, but you might be able to get a little bit from RHJ for the right team.
Yeah. I mean, we all saw what sort of Kyle Anderson got that 4 years, $37 million deal. Is that something that RHJ could demand on the open market, do you think?
I think
If he
so.
has,
Depending
yeah.
on the season he had. I mean, a lot's going to depend on this season. He had a nice season last year. He improved a lot. Obviously, a big thing in the NBA is maintaining that and also continuing to get better. If he were to add, like you said, a 3-point shot, he could definitely get that money, I think.
Yeah, I don't think he has probably right now. Kyle Anderson's a bit of a better defender, but I think RHJ has a lot more offensive potential than a guy like Kyle Anderson, and I think it's about the right team offering him the right contract. But yeah,
And the
it's
right
certainly
fit.
the right fit. Absolutely, each franchise, you're only worth by whatever team offers you that money, whatever GM offers you that money. And I think RHJ is going to want to stay in Brooklyn. I think all these guys are going to want to stay in Brooklyn, but we talked about on the mailbag episode last time. Make sure you guys check that one out as well. It was a really fun one. But yeah, it's certainly interesting to ponder. I think D'Lo seems to be the lock going forward. But it's going to be an interesting season, and this one, if we were to do this, in a couple of months, February during the middle of the season, the answers could completely change. Who knows?
For sure. I mean, I think they could easily change it. It could be all over the place with just how different seasons fluctuate. RHJ wouldn't be a guy that being a restricted free agent, I would not be surprised if a team were to offer him an offer sheet that the Nets did not want to match.
Yeah, I mean, the Nets have offered out plenty of offer sheets that
So
other
someone
teams.
could kind of get back at them.
I think there would be plenty of GMs, Miami, Washington, that would be going, all right, well, let's get one back
Portland.
at you. Portland as well, yeah. So I think that there'll be plenty of GMs that might be like, oh, Sean Marks has killed us this many times. Let's do it with Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. But yeah, I think that RHJ, all the things you mentioned are true, but it's going to be a fun season because there are some guys that we've added in that could take away some minutes from him. Guys like Kenneth Faried, guys like Ed Davis, depending on where they sort of play their positions. Dudley will get some minutes by virtue of the fact that he's a much better perimeter shooter at this stage of his career. So it'll be fascinating to watch the season develop for all three guys.
And in a way, having all those guys and giving Rondé less minutes could benefit the Nets because they could get
Yeah.
him back as a cheaper contract, and he could be more of a role player, which I think is his best fit on a winning team unless he were to make a super big improvement like we kind of mentioned. I think he'd be a really nice role player to have because he's a fringe starter as of right now, and he has some versatility where he can play a couple different positions, defend a couple different positions.
Yeah, and I think free agency, how we sort of go in 2019, will dictate a lot of different things. But I can't see, us re-signing either D'Lo or Rondé and sort of, using that valuable cap space that the Nets have that is probably, as high as anyone out there right now. And the fact that we're already getting those rumors as well. The Knicks will sort of want to get into that sort of playing field by getting rid of Joakim Noah. Even talks maybe of a Tim Hardaway Jr., Courtney Lee. But the Nets are already in that market, and they could even create more with guys like Alan Crabb and such. But it'll be fascinating to see how it all develops. But the Nets value continuity, and the Nets always reward their guys. We did that with Joe Harris as well. So maybe RHJ is the next one.
Before you get onto your Nets, Sleuth, I would mention the Knicks could be a team that would be interested in RHJ. They've been a team that's been tied to him in trade talks. One of the only teams that I've really seen tied to RHJ. So keep an eye on that too for next offseason. But what else you got, Jack?
Yeah, my final one is via net season, and we were talking about the 2K sort of ratings. They, funnily enough, did some ratings predictions. They obviously had Russell at the 83 because that was the one that was released at the time. But at the time, they had Rondae Hollis-Jefferson at 81, Dinwiddie at 80, Levert at 79, Crabb at 78, Carroll at 78, Ed Davis 78, Napier, Faried, Napier at 77, and Faried Allen at 76. My boy Joe Harris at 76, Dudley 74, Musa 73, Graham 71, and Doyle and Kurux 69 and 67 respectively. What do you think of those numbers, Nick? Do you reckon they're around the range, a bit high, a bit low?
It's hard to analyze them all at once.
Let's
But
do Levert. Let's do your boy Levert. What do you think he deserves?
Well, based off Spencer getting a 79, I think that he'll probably get a 79, but I would say he probably earned himself an 80 with his versatile skill set, being able to kind of score inside, run the pick and roll, be a better passer, getting activity defensively with deflections and whatnot, and then kind of improving that shooting later in the season. Personally, I think he'd be an 80 or at least low 80s, but I'm going to assume based off what 2K did, they'll probably make him a 79, at best probably an 80. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that he'll probably be a 78, and I think that we could even be
Get off this
surprised.
show, Jack, now.
I
No.
mean, he'll be. He could. I was gonna say that he could even be more slept on. This is not what I think he should be. This is what I think he will be. So this is what I'm putting my mindset into Ronnie 2K. I think that he could be as low as a 77. I think that because he doesn't have whatever that formula is, and he doesn't have that cachet and that name like D'Lo, like Spencer, that I think he will get incredibly slept on. And I wouldn't be surprised if I'm vindicated in that fact. But Alan Crabb at 78, do you think that's probably about the right number?
Yeah, I think he did enough to boost that up a little bit. Both Levert and Crab were both 76s last year. So I think both them deserve enough to go up at least a couple points, at least one or two at minimum, but I wouldn't be surprised they did more. Crab, I think it's tougher to say because the season was so up and down, but if they're basing it more so off the end of last season, you could even see a bigger jump because he got hot in some of those games. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we'll do Carroll and then we'll do Jared Allen. We'll revisit the others because the game will be coming out soon. They'll be dropping like flies, those ratings and stuff. So Damari Carroll, 78 as well via a net season on Instagram. Do you think same as Crab? You think that's? I think he was a 75, I believe.
77 last year.
77. He must have grown. I think he was 75 at the start of the year.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, honestly, Carroll deserves an 80. That's just me personally. I think he did enough on both ends of the floor consistency-wise to just be a solid role player, maybe 79. But I think like 79 or 80 makes sense for him just because of what he can do. And he's versatile and he doesn't really do anything. He's not like terrible at anything, really.
Yeah, I mean, he is one of my favorite players to play 2K with in terms of the fact that he can shoot the three, he can drive a little bit, he can pass, and he's a good defender. Those are my favorite type of players to play with on 2K. And Jared Allen, a 76. I'm personally not a fan of that. I personally think that could probably is most likely to happen when you look at the fact that, a guy like Luka Doncic and DeAndre Ayton are at 79. I personally think he should be a 77, 78 possibly, but I think 76 is definitely a number that could accredit him. What do you think?
I think that's a trash rating. I think last year he was 75. I would at least boost him up to 78 or 79 because he made so many jumps. And I just think there's a lot that he can improve on this offseason that we don't know. And based off of, I think like obviously 2K does not get this serious, but based off like player development in Brooklyn, like there'd be no reason not to expect him to jump. Like I'd be really interested to see what Joe Harris's jump is from when he was on the Cavs until he's on the Nets now. Like he was probably in the 60s, and last season he finished at a 75. So that should say a lot about how the Nets players improve.
Yeah, Joe Harris is also another really fun one to play with, and he was a 76, so if he takes that mini jump as well. But yeah, we'll definitely be revisiting those as they come out via Ronnie2K on Twitter and Instagram and all the rest, and I'm sure we'll hear plenty of comments from some of our guys as well in response as we did with Spencer.
Yeah, it definitely interesting stuff to keep an eye on how the players care and some of the guys don't care at all.
Yeah.
But Jack, that wraps it up, right?
Yep, that's all my social media sleuthing for this week. I'll see what I can do and see what I can bring on board next episode.
Yeah, and if you see anything you like in social media world and you want us to discuss it, send it our way. But that wraps it up. Check us out on iTunes, Blog Talk Radio, OTGBasketball.com, and Dash Radio and YouTube. As always, guys, thank you for listening, and thank you, Jack, for hopping on.